But first, let's meet a man who's been making audiences laugh for, I suppose well over 20 years. At the moment, he's the comic who is finger-licking good. I mean, of course, Mr. Something like that anyway. Mr. 321 himself, Ted Rogers. That right, Ted?
You're not the only one. It's caused a few problems.
Does it ever cause you problems? Get you into trouble every so often?
Only once, actually, really. It wasn't problems. It could only happen in Belfast. I should say this to you. It's true. We were over there a couple of years ago, and it was a very, very rainy day, and we were walking along the street, and I got a pair of sunglasses on and a hat, and there was a traffic warden on duty right in the middle of a five-way junction. It was really raining, and he loved his job. You know, he was going crazy. And I thought, well, nobody will recognise me in this, and he looked up and he just went... And I thought it could only happen in Belfast, then.
Was that your idea to do that at the beginning?
That was a complete fluke at the very first dress rehearsal. The then director, who now directs Family Fortunes and Price is Right, David Millard, he said, we'll go to commercial and say, we'll be back on 3, 2, 1. I said, well, no, you can't do that. If you're going to do that, you'll have to do that. And he said, what'd you do? People came out of the wall. I said, what did you do? I said, well, that. And that was it. It was as simple as that. And I don't know why it means so much, but it does.
When you look back over all the programmes, though, you've had so many contestants, and they're very unpredictable in themselves, aren't they?
All the time, yes.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, well, you know that. Congratulations on your series, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Done so well. But, I mean, we had a couple last year that you might remember, actually, was marvellous. We got to the elimination question. It's always a tough part of the show, that where you hit the button and you're either right or you're wrong, you know. Now, here we have a German composer. He lived most of his life in England. Nobody was getting near. He was responsible for his water music. Oh, what? Handel's water music. Yeah, well, who wrote it? Schubert. No, I can offer it to you. Who wrote it? Chopin. And that was it.
It's amazing.
You know, that's what happens.
When you first started out in the business, I know that you had impersonations in your act.
That's right.
Who were you doing at that point?
Well, it shows you what it was. When I was a teenager, I mean, just getting into your teens, where you buy records, all comics do that, all people do that. And all the American greats were appearing at the Palladium. And there was Martin and Lewis, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and Frankie Lane. And Danny Kaye was the greatest thing in the world. And I saw two or three of his films. It didn't really mean much. And then I queued up to see him at the Palladium and stood at the back. And to this day, and it's not just being nostalgic, he was the greatest performer I think I've ever seen do an hour. And I used to do Danny Kaye.
I mean, what sort of things would you do in your act?
I'd do all his routines. I can still do them to this day. I mean, everybody did the Lobby Song from Up in Arms or Symphony for Unstrung Tongue, the Little Fiddle from Walter Mitty. But the one I always loved was the Melody in 4F from Up in Arms with all the scat singing in, you know, which was going to join the army with all the scat singing. You know, people do scat singing today like the jazz stuff, oh, shoo-ba-doo-ba-doo and all that. But I loved it when he'd do, say, something like Dean, go, we're ready to get Rid gillet gillet beat bull bane. Rid gillet gillet keep us in the game. Train the train, bull getting gay. Hippie daddle gay. Hippie daddle gay. The gillet keep us in the cup. That's how it went. You've done that once or twice before in your act. Just a few times, yes. Yeah.
Well, then, how did you go on to progress from doing just impersonations and build up the humour and the cabaret acts?
Well, like, again, most performers, Gloria, I suppose, a lot of comics particularly, we all start doing impressions. And I remember I won a talent contest, and my mother took me to two performers who were in the show where I won the contest. And I was going to appear in the professional show. And she said, can you give him any advice? Yes, well, first of all, take him to diction classes and get rid of that dreadful accent. Because I come from up the road. Land of thought, what's it all about, and have some of that. And I don't know what I've wound up with, but it's a bit different now. And secondly, they said, be original. And even at that age, it went in there, you know, be original. You've got to be different. In other words, stop doing Danny Kaye and Martin and Lewis. You've got to, you know, be yourself. And it takes a lot of time in pantomimes and summer shows before you find out what makes you laugh with an audience, you know, or an audience laugh for you.
So at that stage, did you start to introduce the topicality to your act?
That was when I went to my manager, who I'm still with to this day, a great guardian, Keith Devon. And I went into the Palladium for the first time with Shirley Bassey in the second spot. And I got this guitar that blew up and all sorts of business I did, you see. And he said, you can't do that. You've got to come out there in a suit and you've got to deliver. This is the Palladium. And I managed to get a bit together in about 3 months or so, which worked. 9 minutes of it worked anyway. And that was the moment it progressed.
So from then on, it's always a topical gag, is it?
Well, always, no. I mean, my topical gags in my act, I'd probably do about the first 25 minutes every night. I'd change about 5 or 10 minutes every night if I'm appearing live. And I enjoy that. That keeps me alive. But I have lots of routines which have grown over the years, which I've built, which, you know, I would never leave, of course.
At least other people can't pinch it when you're making it up every day, which is another
Oh, listen,
thing.
that happens all the time. Everybody goes through that routine.
You've worked a great deal in the States, and working alongside Bing Crosby on his tour, that surely must be one of the highlights.
Yes, it was. You know, that's another thing. You know, you say, coming from up the road, it's lovely for me to come back this way tonight. And you want to get to the Palladium. And when you get to the Palladium, you want to do well there. And you want to go back and play it again. And I was very lucky in the mid-late 70s. I played there with Perry Como, Andy Williams, Tom Jones, Jack Jones, Humperdinck, Tony Bennett. And then Perry Como said to me, I won't forget you, kid. And then about 2 months later, I had a call from Crosby. And I thought it was somebody putting me on. Is that Ted Rogers? Yeah. This is Bing Crosby from San Francisco. Oh, don't give us all that, you know. And it really was him. And he said, look, Perry said, I've got to work with you. Would you, what are you going to say, no to Bing Crosby? And, he was the guy who took me to America.
So what sort of gigs were you doing there?
Well, we played the Aladdin in Las Vegas. That was our first entree into America, which was 7,500 people, which was rather something. Then we played the Lincoln Center in New York, and then the Uris Theatre. And the Lincoln Center I'll never, ever forget, because that was the place where it really did happen for me there. It was a $100 top audience that night. Everyone was a star that was sitting there. And I did very, very well. I'll always remember the show. And I didn't know, but Tricia Nixon was sitting on the front row next to Bebe Rebozo, who, of course, was Nixon's right-hand fellow, right? And I didn't know she was there, and I said, oh, and then there's Richard Nixon, the only president lying in state while he was still alive. No, it went much better than that. Pulled the place down there. Because he's done very well, out of Watergate Nixon. First of all, he got a let-off, then he got a pardon. Well, you always get a pardon after a let-off, don't you? They didn't understand that one, I can tell you that.
Has President Reagan featured in your act this week since he was re-elected?
Well, re-elected? It's more like resurrected, isn't it? No, not bad. 73 years of age. Terrific, isn't it, really? I mean, he even got the zoo vote. Bonzo's relatives, they voted. Lovely, really. But I think he's great. The guy's great. He goes everywhere. I mean, he went to Ireland to, revisit his roots. Should have gone to Greece in 2000, shouldn't he, really? Then I was in New York, when Jimmy Carter got elected. Now, that was a good one, because Carter gets elected the President of the United States, the greatest nation on earth, so they say. And he gives his first interview to Playboy magazine, and he says, I've committed adultery in my mind several times. Well, no wonder he's always got that smile on his face. Can't you see these women going through his mind? No, Jimmy, I'm not doing it for peanuts.
Tell me, when you're not doing 3, 2, 1, I mean, what sort of things do you like to do to relax?
To relax, well, it seems a bit strange, but I ride. I got into playing polo about 7 years ago. I'm not very good, but I ride and stick 'em ball, and I enjoy that like crazy. I was a footballer way, way back, but that's the game I really enjoy. It
was funny, recently, you mentioned We Love TV, and it emerged, in fact, that those who make television knew very little about it or ever got around to watching it. Do you ever watch any television?
Watch telly? Oh, great, all the time. You can't stop. What can you do? You have to watch television. But like you can never see it at the right time, can you? I mean, you must have a video recorder like we all have. I never see a show when it goes out. I watch The Sky at night in the morning, Good Morning Britain at night. Open University when it's closed, and Play Away when they've gone away. Blankety blank when there's nothing on. Horizon when it's disappeared. Midweek sports special on Friday. Weekend World on Sunday. Sunday on Tuesday. Pebble Mill at 1 at 4 and news at 10 at 3 a.m. That's as far as I get.
As always, to talk to you. I wish you well with your various ventures.
Thank you.
Give me another one of those quickly.
Just one of those. Slow action replay. Dave Allen's tried it. He said, watch Ted Rogers on 3, 2.5.
I'll leave it at that, Ted Rogers. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.